Advice for older men. Let me tell you about a patient of mine. Let's call him George. 74, polite, proud, and trembling slightly as he sat across from me in my office. Not from Parkinson's, not from illness, but from something quieter, something most men never talk about. He looked me in the eye and said, "Doc, I didn't know I was hurting myself." Not with alcohol, not with cigarettes, but with a habit he'd had for decades, one he thought was harmless, even healthy. George isn't alone. I've seen this more times than I can count, and after over 30 years helping older men protect their vitality, restore intimacy, and age with dignity, I can tell you this. After 60, masturbation changes. And if we don't adapt to that change, we risk losing more than pleasure. We risk disconnecting from ourselves, from our confidence, and sometimes even from life. I am a urologist and men's health expert, and I'm here to say what too many doctors won't. You've been told it's natural, and it is. But you've never been told that how you do it matters more than ever now. In this video, I'll share 5 essential secrets about masturbation that older men wish they'd learned earlier. Truths that can protect your prostate, preserve your circulation, and, quite honestly, help you feel like yourself again. And let me say this clearly, you're not too old, it's not too late, and no, you're not the only one. Stick with me till the end, because the 5th secret might just change the way you look at aging itself. Before we begin, if this topic hits close to home, if it makes you feel seen, just type 1 in the comments. If not, that's okay too. Type 0 and I'll know where to take future conversations. Either way, I'm honored you're here. Now let's begin with secret number 1, a truth I've shared with hundreds of men in my practice, a truth that changed everything for them the moment they heard it.
Secret 1. Your erection is no longer the whole story, and that's okay. I'll never forget Richard. He was 72, former high school football coach, still carried himself like he was leading the team down the field. But the day he walked into my office, there was no swagger. Just a quiet question. "Doc, does this mean I'm not a man anymore?" What he meant, of course, was that things weren't working down there the way they used to. He couldn't rise to the occasion as quickly or as reliably, and it shook him. That moment broke my heart and also lit a fire in me, because I hear some version of this almost every single week. And here's what I tell every man who asks. You are not broken. You're evolving. You see, after 60, your body takes a different path. Blood flow slows down, testosterone plays hide and seek, and nerves become, let's just say, more selective in their responses. But listen closely. Erection is no longer the whole story. It's not the finish line. It's not even the main act. In fact, the real story now is presence, connection, and patience. You were raised in an era that equated masculinity with performance, hardness, stamina, control. Nobody ever sat you down and said, "Hey, intimacy doesn't require perfection, it just needs honesty." And no one told you that you can still feel deep release, intense pleasure, and emotional closeness, even if your erection isn't the steel beam it once was at 25. I've had patients who thought they'd lost everything, but they didn't lose their sexuality. They just didn't recognize what it had become. Quieter, more emotional, more meaningful. Less of a sprint, more of a slow dance. And here's the science. Even without a full erection, many men still experience orgasm. That's because arousal isn't just blood. It's also brain. It's memories, emotion, breath, imagination. But if no one tells you this, you'll keep measuring your manhood with the wrong ruler and punishing yourself for something that's simply part of being human. So let me say this like I would to my own brother. You are still a man, still whole, still capable of incredible pleasure. You just need to stop chasing what was and start exploring what is. When you do that, you give yourself permission to enjoy intimacy without pressure and sexuality without shame. And that, my friend, is freedom most men never knew they could have. Now take a breath, because secret 2 goes even deeper. What if I told you masturbation isn't just about the body, but about the heart and mind too? Stick with me, we're just getting started.
Secret 2. It's not just sexual, it's emotional and neurological. Let me introduce you to Howard, a retired Navy veteran, 77, tough as nails, or at least that's what he wanted me to believe when he first came in. But under the bravado, I saw something else, something softer, quieter. He looked at me and said, "Doc, I just don't feel anything anymore." He wasn't just talking about sex, he was talking about life. At first, he thought it was low testosterone, maybe a circulation issue. But the more we talked, the clearer it became. This wasn't about his body, this was about loneliness, emotional numbness, disconnection. Howard had been masturbating every night, not out of lust, but out of habit. Not because he felt alive, but because he was trying to feel something, anything. That's when it hit me. For men like Howard, and maybe for you too, masturbation isn't just about pleasure, it's about coping. You see, after orgasm, your brain releases a cocktail of powerful chemicals: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin. These aren't just pleasure chemicals, they're survival tools. They help regulate sleep, reduce anxiety, lift mood, and quiet emotional pain. For men who live alone, or who've lost a partner, or who feel like the world stopped seeing them the day they turned 65, masturbation becomes more than physical. It becomes emotional shelter, a form of self-soothing, a way to remind yourself, "I'm still here." And there's no shame in that. But here's where the problem creeps in. When it becomes automatic, when the ritual stays, but the meaning fades. That's what happened to Howard. He wasn't engaging with himself, he was escaping himself. And over time, that quiet emotional avoidance dulled everything. He wasn't depressed in the clinical sense, but he'd lost his spark. His habit had become a hollow routine. Touch without tenderness, release without relief. So what did we do? We didn't fix anything. We slowed down. We brought mindfulness back into the act. I encouraged him to reconnect, not just with his body, but with his breath, his thoughts, his emotions, his story. And slowly, he came back to life, not just sexually, but emotionally. That nightly act, it became a moment of grounding again, a moment of presence. And that, my friend, is the medicine no pill can replace. So here's the takeaway I want you to hold on to. If you touch yourself with awareness, intention, and respect, it becomes healing. If you do it mindlessly, it becomes noise. You deserve more than noise. You deserve connection with your body, your heart, and your sense of self. Now, let's move to Secret 3, because the next truth might surprise you. What happens when you stop touching yourself altogether? Turns out that might be doing more damage than you think. Shall we keep going? I'm ready when you are.
Secret 3. The use it or lose it rule is real, but you've been misunderstanding it. Let me tell you about Roy, 74 years old, widowed for over a decade. And just recently, after years of loneliness, he met someone new. Now, this should have been a joyful story, but when he came into my office, he didn't smile. He looked down, ashamed, and said, "Doc, I finally found someone, but my body doesn't work anymore." What he thought was dysfunction wasn't. It was disuse. This is the part no one tells older men. They talk about ED pills, hormone levels, performance techniques, but almost no one explains what happens when you simply stop using that part of yourself for years. Let me be clear, if you stop engaging sexually, whether alone or with a partner, your body starts adapting to that silence, and not in a good way. Here's what the research tells us and what I've seen firsthand for decades. Nerve endings become less responsive. Blood vessels shrink from lack of demand. Elastic tissue loses its spring. Even your brain's arousal pathways can go dim. In other words, your system doesn't stay in pause mode. It gradually shuts the lights off. Roy hadn't masturbated in years, not because he didn't care, but because he assumed it didn't matter anymore. He believed desire was a young man's game and that letting go was just part of getting older. He was wrong. The truth is, your sexual system is like any other part of your body. It needs attention to stay healthy. Not pressure, not performance, just presence. So what did we do? We didn't throw pills at the problem. We reintroduced touch, gently, slowly, consistently. Not for climax, not for ego, but to remind his body what it once knew. Within a few weeks, small sensations returned. Within a few months, confidence followed. And when he reconnected with his new partner, he wasn't perfect, but he was present. And that made all the difference. So here's what I want every man over 60 to hear. Sexual health isn't about proving anything. It's about maintaining circulation, stimulation, and connection to your own body. Even if you're single, even if you don't feel like it, your body still wants to respond. It just needs a chance. The phrase, "use it or lose it," has been laughed at, mocked, turned into memes, but in this case, it's medically true. And now that we've talked about disuse, let's flip the coin. Because what happens when you do use it, but in a way that quietly rewires your brain into numbness? Secret 4 is something I wish I could shout from every rooftop. It's subtle, it's silent, and it's everywhere. Let's dive in when you're ready. Secret 4. Porn may be destroying your sexual reflexes without you even knowing it. Let me tell you about Ernest. He was 68, a widower, sharp mind, good sense of humor, and from the outside seemed to be adjusting well. But one night, he said something that stuck with me. "I still touch myself, but it doesn't feel like anything anymore." That's the sentence that made me pause. Because I'd heard it before, from many men. They thought it was just age, hormones, nerves. But more often than not, the real culprit is something hiding in plain sight. Porn. Now look, this isn't a morality lecture. I'm not here to shame or scold. I'm here to explain, like a doctor who's seen what this does over time. Here's the deal. When you regularly stimulate yourself using porn, especially the fast-paced, high-intensity kind your smartphone now serves on demand, you're not just entertaining your mind, you're retraining your brain. Every time you view those images, your brain gets hit with a surge of dopamine, your internal reward chemical. And your brain goes, "Wow, that's a jackpot." But over time, your system becomes dependent on that level of stimulation. Real life, real touch, real intimacy, even your own imagination starts to feel dull, flat, unsatisfying. This is what happened to Ernest. He wasn't broken. He was overstimulated. His brain had been wired by years of artificial input, and the cost? He couldn't feel real pleasure anymore. He struggled to stay present. He lost connection, not just with partners, but with himself. He told me it felt like watching life through a screen, even when no screen was there. So what did we do? We detoxed, gently, not through shame, but through intention. I helped him step away from the screen and back into his own body, back into breath, presence, imagination, slowness. And within a month, just 1 month, he started feeling again. His sensitivity returned. His emotions felt alive. He smiled more. Why? Because his brain wasn't chasing fantasy. It was relearning reality. So here's what I want you to remember. Porn isn't bad, but frequent, unbalanced use can dull your natural responses. Especially as you age, your brain becomes less flexible. And if you keep feeding it hyper-stimulated novelty, real life will struggle to compete. It's not about quitting forever. It's about asking yourself, is this helping me feel or numbing me from feeling? You deserve better than numbness. You deserve connection, one that begins with you. And now, my friend, we arrive at the final secret. It's not about science. It's not about technique. It's about purpose. And it may be the most important truth of all. Shall we go on to Secret 5, the one that brings all of this full circle?
Secret 5. Masturbation can be a lifeline, not a liability. Let me tell you about Walter, 75, retired engineer, sharp dresser, quiet voice. At the end of a routine checkup, just as he stood to leave, he hesitated, turned back to me, and whispered, "Doctor, is it still okay to touch myself at this age?" You could hear the shame in his voice, as if he'd asked something sinful, like he was confessing a crime. But what Walter didn't know, and what most older men never hear, is this. Masturbation, done with intention, is not something to feel guilty about. At your age, it might just be one of the most vital acts of self-care you still have. Now, I know that sounds bold, maybe even strange, but let's look at the science, shall we? When you masturbate with awareness, not to escape, but to connect, you activate blood flow to your pelvic region. You help maintain healthy tissues. You help your prostate do its job by clearing out fluids that would otherwise stagnate. You reduce anxiety, improve sleep, regulate mood. It's like a biological tune-up, quiet, natural, and under your control. But there's more. Something deeper, something less clinical and more human. You see, when Walter's wife passed away, he shut down. No touch, no intimacy, no self-connection for nearly 6 years. I thought that part of my life was over, he told me. I didn't think I was allowed to still be that kind of man. And that's the lie I want to burn to the ground. That once we pass a certain age, our need for intimacy, desire, connection just disappears. That we're supposed to shrink, get quiet, fade away. No, desire doesn't die, it just softens. And if you listen, really listen, you'll hear it still whispering beneath the surface. So when Walter began reconnecting with no pressure, no goal, just permission, something magical happened. He started sleeping better, smiling more, walking straighter. He wasn't chasing youth, he was reclaiming his right to feel human. And that, my friend, is what I want for you too. Not shame, not silence, but self-respect, even in the most private moments. Because masturbation isn't about fantasy, it's about identity. It's about saying, I still matter, I still feel, I still exist. So if you've made it this far through this conversation, I want to say something you may not have heard in a long time. You are not finished, you are not invisible, and you are absolutely still worthy of pleasure, connection, and care.
The 5 secrets that could quietly save your sense of self. If you've made it to the end of this conversation, I want to say something from the heart. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for having the courage to face a topic most men your age were never given permission to talk about. That alone makes you extraordinary. These 5 secrets aren't just facts. They're truths born of experience, of regret, of transformation. They're what I've learned from decades of walking beside men in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, men who thought they were broken, ashamed, or alone, when really they were just missing the right conversation. We started by challenging the myth that your erection defines your manhood. You learned that pleasure doesn't vanish, it just matures. We explored how masturbation isn't just a physical act, but a deeply emotional and neurological one. Your body's way of staying calm, connected, alive. You discovered that neglecting this part of yourself, whether out of shame or routine, can quietly weaken your system. But with small, mindful steps, that connection can return. We exposed the silent erosion caused by porn, how it rewires your brain and distances you from real intimacy. And finally, most powerfully, we reframed masturbation not as a source of shame, but as a lifeline, a gentle, dignified way to say, I'm still here. I still feel. I still matter. So, here's what I'll leave you with. Aging doesn't disqualify you from desire. It invites you to experience it in a deeper, more present, more human way. And if this video spoke to something inside you, even a little, I want to invite you to be part of this community. Leave a comment below and tell me, which of these 5 truths hit home for you the most? That's how we break the silence, together. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell, because I'm not done yet. In the next videos, we'll explore real, practical tools to support your health as a man over 60, from circulation and prostate strength to emotional vitality and intimacy that actually feels real again. You've made it this far, now take the next step. You're not finished.
You're just getting started. Until next time, take care of yourself. And remember, you're still worthy of feeling fully alive.